have you ever been offended before? You know, that sense to cause to feel upset, annoyed, or resentful, typically as a result of a perceived insult. You ever been offended before? When I was in college, I worked a part-time job in the summer at a warehouse, and an individual thought he would have a fun prank one day. And so as I was walking through the warehouse to show him something, he just decides to really annoy me by having me bend over to grab some product to pull out to show him, and then he says my name. I turn around, he's holding a small gun at me. Then as I'm kind of like, whoa, what's going on? He decides it'd be fun to actually shoot the gun. So he shoots the gun. As he shoots the gun, there is an explosion of gunpowder that comes out of the gun barrel all over me. I was a little bit offended in that moment. Well, I was very mad also. And I was ready to, get really upset and everything else. And I played off cool and everything, pretty mad. And I'm all embarrassed. I have to go get all the gunpowder off of me. I drive home after work that night. Then I'm calling a detective from the St. Louis Police Department to see what I could do to file a complaint. I'm just like, I'm ready just to do all this stuff. Not thinking through the consequences for my employer to lose a customer and all of that. I was just mad. Ever been mad before? Offended? Upset? Frustrated? We can all just tell different stories about how people have hurt us, offend us. Sometimes it's something legitimate that's happened. Sometimes it's just something we've perceived as something that's happened, but we've been offended. I remember one time my wife and I had a really close friend that was helping us, and in the course of her helping us in ministry, she started doing some stuff on the side, and it really began to hurt us and betray us. And so then what did we have to do? We had to have a conversation with her, and it was really neat because we have this conversation with her, and it restored the friendship. Had we allowed that offense to continue, it would have created some distance. We've been there, all of us, hurt and pain. Now, some of us are more easily offended than others. Some hide it well, and others show it clearly. But if we live long or get familiar with someone long enough, we will be offended by them in some way, shape, or form. It's just the reality. And then we all have tells if we've been offended before. And there's different tells that you can tell if somebody's offended with you. What's one thing that we do sometimes? When we're offended, we avoid eye contact. I'm not even going to look at them. Now, we also do this when we're in school, and we don't want to answer the teacher when she calls on us, so what do? You avoid looking at the teacher as if you become invisible if you don't have eye contact. Sometimes we do that, though. We're like, if I'm offended, I'm not going to look at you. Or another thing that we do, we physically avoid the person. We create distance. Or sometimes we just create emotional distance, coldness. Or we have very terse, harsh responses when we're offended. Somebody asks us a question, how you doing? Fine! And then we're thinking, I don't really think that fine meant fine. It sounds like something might be bothering them. And some of us are slower to pick up the cues than others, right? But one of the things we need to think about is, how do I live? How do I operate as a follower of Christ? Paul writes this in Colossians chapter 3, verse 12. Since God chose you to be the holy people He loves, you must clothe yourselves with tenderhearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. I like how the word that Paul uses, how they translate in the New Living Translation, it's like clothe yourself, cover yourself, have it over who you are. So covering me, how I look, how I come across to people, everything, is I come across merciful. I come across gentle, not doing what others deserve. I come across kind, humble, patient, love, peace. I have that covering who I am. It's how I act, how I operate, the person that I am. It covers me. He continues. Make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. Above all, he comes back to this, clothe yourselves with love, which binds us all together in perfect harmony, and let the peace that comes from Christ rule in your hearts, for as members of one body, you are called to live in peace and always be thankful. So here it is, he has this, clothe yourselves with mercy, clothe yourselves with kindness, be covered by that, and then he wraps it up, clothe yourselves with love, but right in the middle of that is an instruction on how to live and act towards other Christ followers in this. Make allowances for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Make allowances for anyone who offends you. As I live for Christ, as I live for Jesus, I will be hurt by the very people I think should hurt me the least. As I live for Jesus, there will be people that I think, there's no way they could harm me. They're fellow believers. And a lot of times, those are the people that hurt us worse. Why? Because my defenses are down around them. They're not going to hurt me because they love Jesus like I love Jesus. And yet, sometimes they're the ones that hurt us the worst. So we need to be patient and show love and mercy. Disagreements, disappointments, offenses happen. So what do? Because I feel like I'm offended. Because sometimes when we're offended, what do? We put up a fence. And so, help, I've been offensed. Something's bothered me. And it's created this wall. And so we have different things that cause offenses. Sometimes it's a matter of there's just something unresolved that's gone on that I haven't dealt with. There hasn't been a chance for it to be made right. Or I just refuse to forgive. Maybe I'm offended because there's a repeated offense. It happened again. We walked through this and we dealt with it, but it's a repeated offense. Or sometimes it's an accidental offense. They didn't really mean to do it, but they did it. Something happened and it creates this accidental offense. Maybe it's, they forgot my name. Or I was walking through Walmart and they didn't see me. Even though they're probably wearing a mask, and so probably they couldn't even recognize me, but the reality is they didn't see me. How rude. They didn't see me, so I'm offended that they didn't see me. That's ridiculous. Or maybe it's, I wasn't invited to the party they had. How inconsiderate of them to not invite me. And so it's an accidental offense, or maybe it's an imagined offense. Well, I had a dream that you were mean to me. And so now I'm offended at you because I had a dream. Like it happened to me this week. I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like very mad. And then I got thinking about, why am I so mad? Because I had a dream. So I get offended. And what starts happening? A wall starts forming. It separates me from you. Or maybe it's I just feel like I should be offended. So I'm just going to be offended. I just feel like right now would be a good time to be offended. So I'm just mad. Or maybe it's a matter of, I'm just easily offended. You looked at me funny, so now I'm offended. You're wearing the wrong style of clothes, so I'm offended. You took my parking space at Walmart or Target. It's Christmas time, and I'm waiting right there to turn left, and you saw them back out, and you pulled right in. I'm offended. Or maybe it's, you're offended. You told me about your offense, so now I'm taking on your offense. I'm now offended because of somebody else's offense that I'm carrying for myself. Or maybe it's, you betrayed me. Or you didn't meet one of my expectations. Or something else is bothering me, but I'll take it out on you. Or maybe it's just, I don't like you. So I'm offended by you because I just don't like you, or I disagree with you. It's my way or the highway. Now, when I build a fence, it's great because it does two things. One, it protects me. I'm safe behind the fence. Another thing that it does, though, is it keeps you away. You can't get through the fence. You can't, because you're on that side of the fence, I'm on this side of the fence. It keeps you away. We're separated. I put up a wall to protect myself, but in the end, what begins to happen is I put the wall up, and I'm behind the wall to protect myself because you've offended me, you've hurt me. What begins to happen is I begin to jail myself. I'm now trapped in the fence that I built to keep you out of. I'm now trapped inside of it. I begin to jail myself. I begin to limit myself. And then, if you've ever noticed, once these fence slats are up, they start to get hard to remove. It's something about when an offense gets locked into us, we have a really hard time of letting it go. Once we've allowed it to be built, we don't want to tear it down. It gets hard. It takes effort to remove the fence. It takes hard to work to pull it down. But it becomes worth it because when I remove the fence, I'm now free. When I have the fence, I'm limited. No fence, I'm free. I can go anywhere. Have the fence, it's now a barrier. So I want to live free. But I always choose what I'm going to do. When I have an offense, I always choose. When something happens to me, what am I going to do with the offense? Am I going to hold on to it and allow offense to be built, or do I let it go? I always have the choice of what I'm going to do. So I want to make sure that I cover all that I do in my relationships with people with love. I want to make sure that I live actively in peace with people. Because why? I control me. I might not be able to control what you did to me. I don't control that. But I control my response to what you did to me. I control. Do I hold on to it? Do I hold on to what I perceived happened or what did happen? Do I hold on to it? Now, there is a difference because there are things that people do to us that are very dangerous, very harmful, everything else. And so how we respond to that's totally different. If I'm in danger, if I'm in risk of harm, I have to do what? Get away from the situation and get help. But when I'm just in a situation where somebody has a different political viewpoint that I have, and so all of a sudden things get tense, and I decide, how am I going to respond to that person? Am I going to hold things against them, or am I not? How am I going to do? What am I going to do with the thing that offends me? Because I control me. I want to make sure I live in a place where I'm always thankful and appreciative of people. When I do that, when I value people, it makes it a lot harder for me to build a wall to keep them away when I value them and appreciate them and love them. That's why the example of Jesus is so powerful in our lives, because he had a lot of reasons to have walls up. Like, there's a lot of times I'm even, like, for us, we'd be like, I ain't ever letting the Pharisees and the Sadducees around me because they're just mean. They're out to get me. They're out to destroy me. Imagine if Jesus had that attitude where he's just like, you that disagree with me, stay away from me. But you know, he didn't have that attitude. They were always there in the midst around him. Why? Because he came to seek and save the lost. He came to die and rise again for the salvation of absolutely everyone. But I control me. As Paul's writing in chapter 3, verse 13, he says this, make allowances for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Make allowances. It's not all about me. Go beyond tolerating to making space for others' faults. We all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. We all have great days. We all have bad days. But a lot of times, and I learned this from one of you in this room years ago in a Sunday school class, she made this comment, we judge others by their actions and we judge ourselves by our intentions. I want to make sure I'm making allowances for other people because they're not me. They don't process things the way I process. They don't think the way I think. They don't always do things the way I think that things should be done. So I want to make allowances for that. And then building on that, I want to make sure that I forgive. Because when I hold on to an issue, I keep that wall up. Because if I'm holding on to it, I want you as far away from me as possible. You're not getting through the wall. When I forgive you, I'm bringing that wall down. Because I'm allowing us to be close. And I want to make sure I deal with the issue quickly, not allow it to be there a long time. If it's there a long time, the fence gets established. And it's harder to tear it down when it's been there a long time. It's harder to let go of things when we have a highway in our brain of constantly thinking about it, where it's over and over and over again in our thoughts. It's harder to let go of those things. So I want to make sure I deal with it quickly. I want to allow it to be made right. I want to quit applying punishment to the other person, but allow God to do His part in the situation. Paul continues, remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. I forgive others when they offend me. Why? One very simple reason. Not necessarily because they deserve forgiveness. Not necessarily because everything's just been made right or perfect. I choose to forgive others when they offend me simply because I live and breathe under the forgiveness of Jesus. He has forgiven me. So I choose to forgive others. I apply the same standard that God applies to me in my relationships to other people. That is so easy to say, and it's very hard to live out. How God can show forgiveness to us when we mess up all the time, when we make these great, bold proclamations, and then we don't always follow through on them. How God can have the patience that He does with us, I do not understand, but the reality is I want to make sure I'm applying that same forgiveness to others that God shows to me. So I want to make sure that when somebody offends me, I don't keep holding on to it. Even if it hasn't all been made right yet. Because I'm going to make sure I don't keep a wall up between me and that other person. So I choose to forgive. I quit replaying everything in my mind. I quit replaying the conversation. I'm wise in my future interactions with the individual. If I'm in danger, I get away. If it's a repeated offense that doesn't put me in danger, we have a conversation about it. We talk it through. We deal with it. I don't hold on to the situation. But really, the reality is, if I can't talk to the other person about it, I need to be careful who I talk about the situation. If I must talk, I talk vertical. If I have to get it off my chest, I gripe to God. Because the problem is, if I start talking and I'm just like, man, Robert, do you know what Bill did to me? Oh, man, I can't believe he did that to me. Oh, what begins to happen? Robert begins to take up the offense, and he holds on to it. And now there's two people that have fences against Bill. There's two people that have a problem with him. Whereas if I just conversate with God and I'm just like, God, here's my situation. God, here's what's going on. And then God can start doing what? What the Holy Spirit does best is He can start working in my heart. He can start being like, hey, let's watch your attitude. Let's look at your thoughts. Let's look at what's going on with you. And God can start dealing with me so that then I can turn around and approach Bill with love to deal with the situation. If I must talk, pray about it, and then maybe consider a trusted advisor that'll speak truth to you, not just be like, I'm with you. Yeah, he's horrible. I must live, interact, and forgive like Jesus. I forgive because I'm forgiven. I love because I'm loved. I live free and do what I can to help others live free too. I don't want to live with a bunch of offense. I don't want to be fenced in. but to be free. I share this with you because we're right in this holiday time. We're in this Christmas time where we're around a lot of different people, where it's easy for us to be offended. But we want to live free. I mean, God sent the very best gift imaginable to us, himself. God in the flesh comes, lives, and breathes among us so that we can see who God is, so that we can know the character and heart of God. And then he lives a perfect life and willingly gives himself on a horrible, painful death on a cross, carrying with him the weight of the sins of humanity, my weight of my sin on himself, willingly dies on a cross, rises again 3 days later so that I can know and be near God. And if he's done that for me, he's done that for all of us. So I want to live in a place where I'm not keeping anything between me and another person so that there's freedom in relationship between us. So that both of us can experience the love, the forgiveness, the mercy, the grace, the awesomeness of who God is. That's how I want to live. The problem is, I have to be willing to get rid of the things that offend me and deal with them and not just ignore them. Because sometimes we just leave a few offenses there and we kind of step away and we're just like, hey, that's still there, and we leave it there. And at some point, we run up against it because we can't avoid it. But we don't want that. We just want to be free. For us and for the people we have relationship with, that we're free. So I encourage you today, if there's things that you're holding on about somebody else, that there's just causing this barrier to you, or maybe it's just an offense that you have, somebody hadn't even done anything, but it's all in your imagination, that you come to the point where you deal with it so that there's freedom of relationship between you and other people, so that you can live and breathe and live and not be confined by the offense any longer. Because we're all in this together. We're all in this together. And ultimately, all of us are going to be with God, hopefully. If not, that's a whole other thing for you to deal with your heart with God, to believe in who Jesus is, to accept him as your Lord and Savior, and allow that to take place in your life. But otherwise, all of us, followers of Jesus, are going to be together forever in eternity with God. So let's just start living that way now, where we don't hold on to things against one another, but we apply the same standard that Jesus has with us, because Jesus wants to be close with us all the time. So he doesn't allow there to continue to be barriers between him and us. So let's apply that same standard in our relationships to other people. Let's pray.